Okay, so who out there, like me, pushing 50, still has CRT televisions, VCRs that work, that they use, DVD players, CD players, plays cartridge games, plays your PlayStation, PlayStation 2. Okay, I'm one of those guys. Okay, if you're like me, then you love CRT. Okay, now I love CRT image. I have a ton of kids. I have a 10-year-old son. He loves CRT image. One time before I ever got an HDTV, I think it was back in 2012, when it was the end of the world. Okay, and I had a neighbor who was seriously drunk asshole. Like when he died, they found a vodka box ziggurat in his basement. Okay, he would scream at us while we skateboarded. I'd skateboard with my daughter occasionally on Saturdays when it was really nice, and I built a grind box. And I understand people might not want to hear skateboarding a lot, but I don't want to hear leaf blowers, lawn mowers, dogs barking, stereos booming. That's just part of living in a city. We live down the street from a junior high school, across the street from a church with a friend school. We live down the street from a loading dock. We're down the street from a railroad tracks. There are cop sirens, fire truck sirens, meat wagon sirens. 24/7 there's noises. If you're looking for them, you're going to find them. Now, granted, we do have quiet spells, but you're not going to go too long where I live without some disturbing noises. Well, this guy worked at night, and he expected everyone around him to be totally quiet during the day because that's when he was sleeping. You know what I mean? One of those just magically drunk assholes who expects the entire world to bend to their schedule when they work third shift. It's like, so he would come out drunk out of his mind and yell at us for skateboarding and stuff like that. One time, I asked my daughter, actually I told my daughter to go inside and get something. We were out in the front yard, and he was in his room up there, probably near pass out drunk, with his window open, and he screamed, "Tell him to get off his goddamn ass and go in and get it himself," right? Like, that's the type of level of human being that we're dealing with here, right? Well, one day I invited him over. Okay, this was before all the drunken hatred and everything. It was before he yelled at us to never say hi to his wife, or he would call his wife's son, who was a sheriff, every time we would skateboard. Okay, and it was just a total BS situation. He died, and I couldn't feel sorrier for a better asshole. Either way, he came in. He looked in my living room, and I didn't have an HDTV. I had a CRT television off in the back in my bay window. And we turned on the TV and started watching it, and he said, "You know what?" I said, "What?" He goes, "That looks so good." And I was like, "Yeah, I know." So I said, "I like CRT televisions." I said, "I have no desire to own an HDTV." Okay. That was a lot of fluff for I love CRTs, but I'm good at that. Anyway, like I said, couldn't have happened to a nicer asshole. Fast forward, my daughter grows up, the one I skateboarded with. She goes to college, she graduates, gets a business degree, gets married, she's going to have a baby. Before she moves out to go to college, she had saved up money and purchased this 55.5-inch Roku 4K television. She wanted a good TV for her bedroom. I remember that when she got it, she set the box that it came with on its side on top of stuff on the edge of her room, and just set the TV on top of the box. The box was bending, the TV was wobbly and everything. They didn't care. They would watch it, and whenever I'd check on them, they'd be watching TV, right? And they'd have the volume on like 3 or something. And she'd go, "Oh, I like it. I like it to be quiet," right? So anyway, when she moved out, she couldn't take the 55.5-inch Roku 4K Insignia television with her, so she sold it to me. And said, "Okay, I'm selling it to you cheap." This was my foray into HD television sets. Now, I had gotten them before to build arcade cabinets with that would use whatever composite, high definition, and high sync rate game systems. So but never like, hey, this is going to be my primary television. So I didn't know what to do with it at first, and I would turn it on and just be like, what is this for? And of course, eventually I learned that it was a smart TV that had the internet and could go online, could do YouTube through an app, that I could name all of my inputs and stuff. And so I started using it for work. It became my work monitor. And so this is the TV that I program on. This is the TV that I watch YouTube on, or I watch, now I watch streaming services, Paramount Plus, or Max, HBO Max, stuff like that. I mean, I use this for RF systems, like RF out systems, like my color computer. I play my color computer through this, and it's straight piped RF cable, coaxial going into the back of the thing. I use it for a lot now. So, one problem I have with it is old school game systems, even though it has the inputs for them, it has all the, purple, green, red, yellow, red, white, S-video, HDMI, everything. All of the old RCA output, or the purple, whatever, purple, green, yellow, whatever those are, the RGB style ones, they all look like crap. Like they have this, it has this weird like auto-correcting mesh kind of look that it puts over everything, and the signal is always degraded. It looks really nasty and laggy and crappy. And the TV has a game mode that, like I guess it does less post-processing with the image, and so the image may not look so good, but it increases the frame rate so that there's little or no lag, right? So, enter the scaler. The scaler is a device that you use to double or quadruple or whatever the resolution of your old school system. And it clears it up and refines it so that your TV digests it as though it is a higher resolution game system. And now, with the advent of emulators for the past 25 years, we've had scaling involved, and also effects. So some of the post-processing available in emulators will raise the resolution and then eliminate the jagged edges of sprites, and it can make video games look like cartoons. It makes them look really good. And so I've experienced that for 20 plus years with Gen, which is a Sega Genesis emulator, with NES emulators, any old school game emulator where you're playing a ROM on a computer or on an Xbox or something, usually will have one of these like Eagle 2X or SIA 2 times, and it trims the corners of sprites to make it look rounded. So the RetroTink came out, and the RetroTink was somewhat pricey. I think they're $200 or $300 minimum, and they would do the same thing. They would scale the graphics and allow you to do some of those effects. But sometimes there was lag, sometimes the sync rate wouldn't work right, sometimes your game system's resolution couldn't be doubled properly, and just it was a work in progress. It still is. I think RetroTink is in its 5th incarnation now, and it does all kinds of processing and will work with nearly anything. But just like anything cool out there, like maybe the Klon pedal, right? Guitarists out there know about the Klon pedal. The big story with the Klon pedal is they made this pedal that's got this fuzzy tube taste, perfect distortion, brown sound mixed with 80s rock, kind of the perfect distortion pedal. It's a golden pedal with cool knobs. It has a centaur on it. Eventually this pedal went up in price catastrophically, retardedly, insanely, to thousands of dollars. The original Clones go for thousands. A brand new Clone that's name brand is $1,000 or $2,000. And so, like the RetroTink, like the Clone, like the Stratocaster, like the Gibson, like the best drums, like MIDI keyboards, like computer systems, graphics cards, whatever you can come up with, they got a hold of it in China and they copied it. And because of their massive bulk manufacturing processes, super low pay, people living in trailers near factories, making, pennies an hour and stuff like that, they can make everything cheaper and as good, or maybe slightly worse, than those expensive things that you want. The RetroScaler2X is a Chinese copy of the RetroTink, and the RetroTink will, scale your graphics onto your TV. So what I have here is meant to make it so I can play my games that I love on my HDTV, and I don't have that crappy, weird, whatever kind of filtering effect is going on in low grade picture. And so I bought one. It was about $60. Honestly, best $60 you could spend if you refuse to let go of your old technology. Now, I have gaming systems. I have a laptop hooked up. This is a laptop going through the 55-inch TV because it has HDMI out. It's like a really nice laptop that I use constantly. And it can play pretty much any old school. It can play PSP games, PlayStation. It might handle some PS2 emulation. It can emulate Dreamcast. It can emulate Jaguar, 3DO, NES, Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, Neo Geo. It can emulate any of that. And it can add the effects, the doubling of the resolution. It's great, right? And it can use Bluetooth, Xbox One gamepad, and just all that stuff. So it's modern. It works fine. Maybe you'll find one at a pawn shop for $150. Why bother? But I actually have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, at least 7, but possibly more Model 1 Sega Genesis systems. I have the original NES. I also have an excellent emulation system called a Retro Duo that will emulate NES, Famicom, Super Nintendo, Super Famicom with the Retro Gen cartridge, Sega Genesis, multi-carts that do Master System, Mega Drive, and it does such a great job emulating that you'd be hard-pressed to tell. You can't tell that it's not the original system. It's the best emulator other than, the field programmable gate array, chips that are exactly the same as the original chips. Other than that, this is as close as you can get to the real thing without having the real thing. I also have the Sega Saturn, 3DO, CDI, PC Engine with CD-ROM, with arcade card, all of the retro systems that I love, N64 with the the RAM upgrade and multi-cart, and all of that stuff. So I need some way to be able to play some of those systems on my HDTV and have them look good. And this is the way to do that. It's the cheapest, best way to do that. So I'm going to show some of the cool games that I love. I'm going to show without the 2x effect, just the double resolution, and just pass-through mode for some of these. Now I don't have S-Video right now. So this is just going to be the RCA outs of these systems going through a switch box. The switch box is RCA out. That's going into the RetroScaler2X, which is then HDMI cable going into my Roku 55-inch TV. Okay, and I'll show, several games on several game systems, and we'll just kind of have a little foray into the experience you'll have. Now, you don't want to buy a Nintendo because you played one 35 years ago, and then over that process in time, you, just like everybody else, you threw away your VCR, you threw away your DVD player, you threw away your CD player, you threw everything away, and all you have is a high-def TV and a smartphone, okay? And then you get nostalgic, you get dewy-eyed, you're on Facebook Marketplace, or you're looking somewhere, and you go, oh my God, there's someone in my town with an original Nintendo Entertainment System. You're getting dewy-eyed. I remember playing that with my fill-in-the-blanks relative. It has the games that I like. It's only $200. You call the guy, you get it, you bring it into your house. Oh man, all it's got is the RF cable. Right, so then you find out your HDTV actually does have an RF input, a coaxial input. You screw it in there, you plug it in, you turn it on, and it looks like crap, it plays like crap, it feels laggy, and you're like, your experience has now been ruined. Okay, and that is what's going to happen for everyone who gets anything from that time. And it varies in degrees based on the complexity of the system. So if you're doing this with your Nintendo, that's going to suck in the absolute worst possible way. You do it with your original PlayStation, it's going to suck, but maybe not as bad as the Nintendo, still going to suck. And so how this enhances games cannot be implied or exaggerated enough. It really truly fixes that modern problem of old school systems through HDTVs. So without further ado, we're going to show off old school games through my RetroScaler. Now I got the blue one. Mine has a blue top and a red bottom. You can also get this one, the red top. And I'll just show you what's in my tabs real quick before we jump, because this is my next plan. I have a Dynamo HS5 arcade cabinet. And anybody who doesn't know what that is, when you went to the arcade and played Street Fighter 2, that was a Dynamo HS5 cabinet. I have one of those. An original, beautiful, I love it. It has a multi-cart in it though. And the multi-cart pisses me off because it fast forwards through the intros of some of the games. It doesn't emulate perfectly. It has, 1,000 games, but only most of them play okay, but none of them play absolutely perfectly. So one thing you can do with these, and what I'm about to do, is get a JAMA harness. My harness is 8 up. This is the cables that connect your power supply, screen, and controllers to your PCB that's an arcade game. This is the 161 Neo Geo multicart. It's a multicart, just like your Sega EverDrive multicart, just like the Uno cart, Harmony cart. The system doesn't know the difference between that and the actual real cartridge. So this does not change the performance or anything. As far as the arcade machine knows, it's an actual real Neo Geo card, because it is the ROM. Okay? And then a Neo Geo. This is your MVS board. This is the horizontal one. The cartridge snaps in right here flat, and I can very easily just install this into my Dynamo HS5. Okay, this is a sword that my son wants because he stabs everything, or it's a gun and it's war. He's a little Scorpio. And this is a guitar that was on Temu that is from China, but I have to get just because of that. I mean, I love Old Glory, and that's the coolest little amp I've ever seen in my entire life. I don't know anything about whether these are good. I've heard good things about the, the James, what's it called? Something, here we go. It doesn't even say, really, it doesn't even say. Leo James, that's what it is. I'll just remember it. Here we go. Leo James. These are the new cheap, crappy Chinese, but still probably better than anything. Here's one that comes with a different amp. I would never want this because I only want this for this amp right here. I'd probably take the neck off of this guitar and put a maple Stratocaster style neck on it, and I'd put a better bridge. I'd put like a real Fender licensed 6-screw bridge on here. So it'd have a real Fender bridge, a Fender copy neck that doesn't say Leo James on it, and then I'd play the guitar through this amp. You know, when I'm homeless and I'm begging for quarters. Anyway, that's in the future. Okay, so next up, RetroScaler2X. Okay, I just realized something. One thing I might do is compare the actual hardware through the RetroScaler to emulators of this with the same ROM through this television, so you can see the difference. Even though I will always promote, I will extra promote real hardware, real cartridges, real game pads and joysticks from that era over Bluetooth Xbox One controllers through a computer. You know, a computer, at the very least, you're going to be using hundreds of watts more power, and not even that. You're never going to get exactly the same thing. So no matter what anyone says, if I play Sega Genesis ROMs on this laptop through my HDTV with a Bluetooth Xbox One controller, it is actually impossible to have an identical experience to what I'm about to have with a real Model 1 Sega Genesis, a cartridge, and a 6-button pad. Okay, and the scaler, I forgot to say this, is a zero lag device. So there is absolutely no lag at all happening with this scaler. Okay, here we just have pass-through. This is without the resolution doubling and without the 2 times effect. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and zoom in. My camera sometimes has to catch up with the sharpness of the screen. So. Oh, and this is just direct signal through my TV. I'm not widening the image. Okay, now I'm going to turn on the resolution doubling. Now, this is, it might be difficult to see, but I can see the image is sharper and cleaner. This is because where it was a 320 by 224 or less resolution image, it is now being doubled to 640 by 480 or 640 by 400 to match up better with the Sega Genesis. I really love what happens when you add the 2 times filter. I used to not really like that stuff that much because I wanted things to look authentic. But usually that was when I was using TV out through a PC or using it through a CRT somehow. So I wanted it to be the raw pixels, and then the CRT would do the rest of the effect to make it look good. But in this particular case, rounding the edges of the graphics is actually desirable. It looks like a cartoon. It looks good. So now I'm going to do that. There we go. Now the image has the sharp edges of the pixels clean, connected. And you can see it looks more like a drawn cartoon. It looks higher resolution. It is higher resolution. There, Sega has the outlines. So what I'll do is I'll start the game and then I'll pause it and we'll cycle through the different effects. I'll find a good spot. A lot of people think this was a Capcom game because in the arcade it was Capcom, but this was actually done by Sega. Okay, this is perfect. This is perfect right here because he's on a little hill, so zoomed in we can actually get a look at this. And what I want to do is I want to zoom in a little bit on him, on Maximo Arthur here. I'll have the bad guy in the picture too, just for fun. Now, I'm going to turn off the resolution doubling and the 2x effect, and then I'm going to enable resolution doubling, then I'm going to enable the 2x effect. So here we have it. This is with no effect. There we go. I'm going to let it focus. So this is just the Sega Genesis passing through, and it is cleaned up. It cleans up the image regardless. There is none of that like crappy filtering going on that the Roku will do and what most smart TVs will do to your old school systems. It will have a terrible kind of weird pattern, crisscrossy, crosshatchy kind of pattern on all of the stuff. It really truly looks terrible. And then that with signal degradation, which this doesn't have because it's HDMI. So immediately you lose the signal degradation and you don't have that weird processing effect that the televisions do to your old school system. So immediately it's going to be better. This right here is better than the Sega Genesis is just going directly into the Roku. I'm not going to go through the process of disconnecting crap to show that, but just you can try it if you want. Take my word for it. RCA cables going from your Sega Genesis directly into your smart TV are going to look terrible. And this is going into the scaler with no resolution doubling and with no processing. So this is just pass-through. Now I'm going to enable just resolution doubling. That's it. So this will be going from 320 to 224 or 320 200 Sega Genesis resolution, which is actually higher resolution than Super Nintendo. For those nerds out there who don't know, the Sega Genesis is usually higher resolution than the Super Nintendo. That's why Super Nintendo games where it's a port will look squished, circles will look like ovals, characters will look squashed and fat. That's because they just took the native resolution of the game, which the Sega Genesis could handle but the Super Nintendo couldn't, and just put it on the system. And so you got a lower vertical resolution or whatever the different resolution was, and that would affect the game. Which is why I'll always pick a lower color, better playing game that's the right resolution over a higher color game that's the wrong resolution, because the graphics look wrong. The majority of Super Nintendo ports, they just look wrong. In my eyes, they look wrong. I care about that resolution. So here's the double resolution. It's turning it from 320, 224 to 640 by 480 or 640 by 400, something like that. And it has to redo it. So this one you're going to see. Now that is the resolution doubled. and it looks even better. It's cleaner. There's more visible image. There was some like kind of crisscrossy graphical, not really artifacting, just separation of colors based on the pixels and the layout of them that is now gone by doubling the resolution. So there's a place for all of the pixels now, whereas before things were kind of in an in-between state. Because this HDTV is probably, you know, no one was thinking, hey, let's make this work with 320 by 224. That's such a drastically low resolution. We're talking like, you know, Amiga 1000 resolutions. We're talking about Nintendo and older system resolutions, Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, PC Engine. 640 by 480 would be ultra low resolution for systems like this. So they weren't even thinking of that. Okay, so now I'm going to enable the 2 times effect, and now you need to look closely at the main character. See that? Immediately, it's like everything is drawn. It's like somebody drew this guy with a marker, like a comic book or something. It's so clean and beautiful and perfect, and with 0 lag, this is an improvement on your video games. Games where the resolution and the type of game, games like Mortal Kombat 2 and 3, games where the drawing art, the pixels might not, you know, be, because okay, back in the day we didn't like pixels. You know, as resolutions were getting higher and systems were getting better and the color count was getting higher, we didn't want to see pixels. But today, you know, fast forward 30 years or more, now we're like, oh, I miss those old blocky pixel graphics from back in the day, so we want them. But in this particular case, it really does make the graphics look like a cartoon. In some instances, in most instances, I could argue that even though it's a lower color image, it looks much better than the arcade game itself. And you could do this with arcade stuff, no problem. Like a consoleized MVS, Neo Geo with RCA out, no problem. Because that RCA out or S-Video, whatever you've hooked it up for, pipes into the RetroScaler, and then it softens it. So you could have Neo Geo games where there are no visible edges of pixels. So I'm going to go through the cycle again real quick. Okay, this is no resolution doubling. I'm going to go ahead and back the image off slightly because if you look at the bottom of the screen, you can see some of the effects of doubling the resolution. So if you look at the bottom, the little power bar meter, the faces, without the resolution doubled, there's some of that little sidebar effects and things like that. Notice the pixelization of the little cloud layers, where you can see a stair-stepping effect of the cloud layers. The visible pixel leveling, stair-stepping effect of the branches of the tree. You can see that all the drawings, stair-stepping effects, the top of his helmet, the connections of his armor, the blades, the long blades of grass coming up, the edge of the scythe, okay? Now I can see kind of a vertical line thing going on with the power bar. Now I'm going to hit the button to double the resolution. And now that line for the power bar is gone. You still see all the stair stepping and everything, but the picture is cleaner. And that's because where the pixels were kind of mashed into a higher resolution screen, now there's actually a place for all of the pixels within the resolution of the image. And now I'm going to hit it one more time, and I want you to look at the edges of everything. Wherever you can see a stair-stepping effect, the branches, the clouds, around his helmet, the line on his helmet, the scythe on the monster, everywhere where there's a gradient, stair-stepping, pixel-like effect on the image is going to disappear right now. Now look at that. It's like everything is drawn. It really is a magnificent effect, and especially on an HD TV, this is a magnificent effect. The blacks is perfect, clean black. Now, of course, I've adjusted my colors. I've tweaked my TV to try to get the best possible image. And so now, let's play this. And I can feel there is zero lag. Now, HDMI has zero lag through your television. In game mode, there's little or no lag anyway, but you know, HDMI is just directly into your TV. Now, their TV's processing under certain situations will present a minute level of lag, so I can't say with utter certainty that there's absolute 100% zero lag in this, but I can tell you that the game system itself has no lag, and that the controls feel like there is no lag. Oh, see, I was pressed left, but I ducked. Okay, here we go. Now, just for reference here, I'm using the best controller ever made, an original Sega 6-button pad. And this is a real Model 1 Sega Genesis. But yeah, I love it. I love the graphics. The graphics are better. I really love it. I love how it looks. Now, this is what I would consider to be a drastic improvement on the capabilities of the Sega Genesis. It really looks better than what you're accustomed to with these game systems. To have not only the double resolution, but to have the edges of all of the pixels cleaned up with that 2x effect. So, in my opinion, this is desirable. You may not like the 2x effect, and you don't have to have that. And in fact, if you just want the picture cleaned up, $60 isn't bad to have the picture cleaned up, just channeling the system through an HDMI connector. So even that isn't bad. I love the magic effect of this weapon. Got a puke pig coming up pretty soon. There he is. So yeah, Sega made this. They said, hey, let us handle that in-house. And they ended up making one of the greatest home conversions. Back in the day, because we didn't have an arcade machine to stand right up next to our home television, of course, we thought this was the same. How about that? Okay, so let's run through a few of my favorite Sega Genesis games and just check them out. And then we're going to show Super Nintendo games, Nintendo games, maybe a couple Famicom games, and some Saturn games. And I might go ahead and drag my N64 over here. I haven't tried it through this yet, so that'd be a new experience for me. But I absolutely love the Nintendo 64. I think it is, well, I truly believe it was Nintendo's last great system. Because it was cartridges, the cartridges still work, the controller was unique and cool. First time having that really cool, precise analog. Yeah, it's weird having to change hand positions. Today they have modern game pads that look more like Xbox One pads or Xbox S Series pads, and those are for the N64. So you don't have to change your hand position to get thumb pad or analog. But they did it so that when you're holding that center part, it feels like you're holding the handle of a gun, and then you have a trigger and you have an analog. So they weren't without reason for making it like that. But the Nintendo 64, I could just veer off on a huge conversation about it. Maybe we'll do that later. So next up, a couple of more Sega Genesis games.
Get over here!
ABAC, ABB. My favorite code though is the dollar code, which is down, up, left, left, A, right, down. You press start first to do that. Down, up, left, left, A, right, down. And this you can change even more things. Your blood code, I think, blood code I think is, yeah, it's right there. I think one of them, maybe flag 6, makes it so that the enemy always does a fatality, right? So, now, I'm not going to show the pass-through resolution now, since it's so similar to the doubled resolution. I don't really think that's necessary, but and this is just doubled resolution. But what I am going to show is the graphics of the game, double resolution, and then with the additional effects. Okay, so I guess I'll just start it. I haven't played this in a while. Of course, I always pick Sub-Zero. So you want to argue about which of these is better. Sega Genesis or Super Nintendo? I'm not even going to get it. There is no way you will ever convince me that the Super Nintendo version of this game is better than the Sega Genesis version. It's not going to happen. Oh, you got me. I love this game. Now, of course, I like the Sega CD version slightly better. More animation. Here I am actually playing the game. Been a while. I'm going to go ahead and finish this round, then I'll go ahead and pause it and we'll run through the different modes. Oh, I did the, yeah, wow. Oh, I did it wrong. Okay. I went for the head thing, grabby thing. It was down forward, down high kick, I think, or maybe it's, shoot, I don't even remember, honestly. I don't remember all the fatalities anymore. It's been a super long time. So, okay. Oh, I just realized there's no way to pause this game. How about that? I think it's high punch. That's what it is. So this game, this is missing clouds in the sky for this. That was the big complaint. Oh, there's no clouds in the sky. Well, hey, it's a clear day today. How about that? Darn it, it didn't do it. Okay. So, I don't know. I'm going to restart the game so it will just go automatically through it. Okay, here we go. Since you can't pause the game. I think that the improvement in the graphics when the 2 times effect is enabled that joins the softening effect, I guess is what I should be calling it. It's not 2 times. 2 times is the resolution doubling, but the effect where the jagged edges of the pixels are softened. I hope this game has a demo. Now, of course, that's not animated because this is a ROM. This is a cartridge. It's not an arcade board or a CD. On the CD version, it has that. Here we go. Ready? That's normal. That's softened. Okay. I love it. I love the softening effect. It's so good. It's just like I just love it. Now, of course, I've beaten this game. Everybody's beaten Mortal Kombat. Learned all that back in the day. You know, I knew a lot of fatalities and. You know, I never liked this game as much as Street Fighter 2 Championship Edition or Super Street Fighter 2. I didn't like the game though, and I thought that, you know, Nintendo's morality stance was retarded. We live in a world of media with tiers of accessibility. We govern ourselves. We have G-rated, PG-13 rated, R-rated, NC-17 rated, X-rated, triple X-rated movies. We all pay very close attention to those things. The Entertainment Software Rating Board that was born from games like Wolfenstein 3D and Mortal Kombat, any game with blood or gore, was prepared to judge and label and discern which games needed to have warnings and things. And so there's an alternate universe out there, right, where Nintendo just said, let's have the ESRB warn people, and we had an arcade perfect MK for the first, you know, the Super Nintendo game, and then there would have been no question about which was better. Now there was like a code, I guess like maybe a Game Genie code or something, where you could turn what was then supposed to be like sweat splatters on the Super Nintendo into like a crimson purplish red mist, which, you know, it looked wrong. It still looked wrong, and the placement of the graphics was wrong on the Super Nintendo game. So there wasn't just the lack of blood. There were problems with how the game was, how it played too. It didn't play as good as the arcade. Gameplay is everything. So you could have a game with the best graphics, best sound, best animation, you know, awesomeness, right? And the gameplay sucks, the game sucks. You can have a game with crappy graphics, crappy sound, barely any animation, low color, sputtery mech. If the gameplay is really good, then the game is good. It can actually be played. So with Mortal Kombat, I don't think anyone was really expecting the Sega Genesis to, you know, make a perfect arcade port of that game. We all knew, because we all read, you know, the stat sheets of these systems. Look at that. I love the cleanup effect. I think it's so good. It improves the game having that. Okay. So now let's move on to another Sega game. Okay, here we have R-Type for the Sega Master System. Okay, so because the Sega Genesis wanted to be able to play arcade games, they wanted the 68,000 processor, but also the Z80 if you're in Europe or whatever. And so most Genesis games will use the Z80 to control music or to do some side thing in the game, and it will use the 68,000. But because the main processor of the Master System, or the Mark III in Japan, or the Master System in Japan, was the Z80, it's backwards compatible. Okay, so this is through a EverDrive cartridge But I do have a power-based converter, which snaps to the top of the Sega Genesis, and all it is a pin converter, because the system natively supports Master System compatibility. It just doesn't have a Master System cartridge port. The power-based converter is a Master System cartridge port. So this is the resolution doubled without softening. And while this isn't the, graphic carbon copy perfection that is the TurboGrafx 16 or PC Engine version of R-Type, this is a good version of R-Type. It's not, it's slightly smaller graphics, but the gameplay is there. Okay, so now let's go ahead and, here we go, soften up those pixel edges. And wow, just immediately I can see a big difference. I love the softening effect. And of course, the only way something like this could actually happen on those older systems would be for them to have a significantly higher resolution. Okay, so you wouldn't be able to have an effect like this unless this was like an 800 by 600 or at least 640 by 480 system, which was unheard of at the time. 640 by 480 was like computer resolution. When I hear the bleepy bloopy music of the Master System, it always reminds me that we could have had the FM chip in the US, and I really think it would have competed better with the Nintendo. I think the Nintendo sound chip in the NES and in the Famicom were excellent. And so some of the best times were because of that cool sound that was going on. I don't think most people give it the credit it deserves, because it's hanging out in the background and it really is pacing the game, and it's very important. So, like Super Mario Brothers. Could you imagine playing Super Mario Brothers but no music at all? Or with a different song? Because the song's so catchy. You turn it on and it's dun 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 dun. It's got, whatever Mario it was, Mario 2. It's kind of like parlor music. If you change the music, it's just not the same. It's like taking the chocolate chips out of your cookie. It's not the same, okay? So let's go ahead and cycle through real quick, since we're zoomed in here. Okay, now we have pass-through. And it looks fine, nice and clean. I'm going to go ahead and double the resolution. And of course that's slightly cleaner and sharper. The pixels are more discernible, more prevalent. Okay, now we're about to go back to the title screen. Here's your doubled resolution, and now softened. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and cycle through it again. Doubled resolution. And then we're going to let the game start. This is the doubled resolution. And now softened. And I really think this softening effect is magnificent. It really is, it's worth it. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and try to line this up a little bit better. This is on an HD camera filming my television. I don't have one of those like, whatever, screen grab kind of recording devices that pipes the signal through it. I don't own one. Maybe one day. So the screen will blur sometimes as the camera focuses. but I can say you're seeing what I'm seeing. Sometimes there's a slight difference in brightness as the screen adjusts, but okay, so that was a Master System game. Let's take a look at another game. Okay. Now a game that is cartoony to begin with. Okay. Fantasy Zone. Now the main character is Opa Opa, which in Japanese is actually just Papa. So Opa Opa is Papa. And oddly enough, this game looks better in its licensed form on the Nintendo. But then the unlicensed version by Tengen, or Tengen, however you want to pronounce it, maybe doesn't look as good as this. So, and you know, that is chronologically probably relative. So the first version to come out was either the Master System or the Tengen version. Probably the Master System version. Tengen was just taking it and trying to do a good version of it. And then Nintendo had the time when going to license the game to look back at the two different versions that existed on the market and said, well, we're going to improve upon that. So, for all intents and purposes, it should look better, being the later version of the game. I think maybe it was, I don't know, Sunsoft or somebody that licensed it. I love Black Cart Tengen Nintendo games. I've always called them Tengen, even though I guess it's pronounced Tengen. But because it looks, in our language, I think, the way it's spelled, T-E-N-G-E-N, would be Tengen. It rolls off the tongue. So, Tengen did unlicensed Nintendo games by stealing the code for the security chip, the NES 10 chip, and then putting the corresponding chip in their cartridges. It's a two-chip process where you have a security chip in your cartridge that talks to the security chip in your Nintendo, and then it allows it to play. And so, rather than allow them to make games, Nintendo said, we don't want our main competitors like Sega or Atari to go through Tengen and make their games for the Nintendo. We want to control the games that come out for... Because they really were like the video game Nazis of the 80s. Nintendo would not sell you their systems if they found out you were selling unlicensed games or competitor systems. So if they found out you're selling Master Systems or selling Tengen games, then you wouldn't get as many, or you wouldn't get any of the systems. So, you know, they had a stranglehold. They also had exclusivity clause with the main game producers, Konami, Capcom, and everybody. There were ways around it, but for the most part, that's why so few games existed on the Master System. Now, if Sega said, we're gonna circumvent that and make deals with smaller third-party companies that are created just to be a gateway for Konami or Capcom or IREM or whoever, which IREM didn't care, they made games anyway, then you may have had Castlevania for the Master System or Mega Man before the clause was over and they made it for the Genesis. So, and you would have had higher color, better looking versions of those games, and then that coupled with the FM chip that could have been in the US Master System, the best versions of those games would have been on the Master System. Now, whether that would have killed the game industry or ruined our lives or not, you know, Nintendo was the shot in the arm that the industry needed. And it could have been a controlled quelling in 1983. When people say they had we had a video game crash, there was a news report with a little boy that looked exactly like me. I mean, I think it might have even been me, saying, well, it's just boring and I'd rather go outside and do something like ride my bike or throw water balloons or play with a cap gun or something. They'd rather do something outside, which wasn't really true. what happened was American companies were making good stuff. ColecoVision had licensed Donkey Kong. Nintendo couldn't stop them, so they walked into the Consumer Electronics Show about to show off a deal they were going to make with Atari or someone else for a better game system, and they saw their game up on the wall, and they weren't the ones making it. So they left angry and refused to play with anyone for a couple of years. That was the game crash of '83, which we look back and call it. Now, back then, we didn't even know that was happening. We were just like, whatever. We didn't care. There was already a massive amount of video games to choose from. There were already massive amounts of systems, and so all it really meant to the consumer in 1983 is that the game systems were cheaper, the games were cheaper, and the ones that you couldn't afford last year or the year before, now you can afford them. It didn't affect us at all. Then we look back in time and see that at that time, little or no new video game products were coming out for roughly a year and a half to 2 years. In Japan, that didn't happen. They just kept on pumping out game systems, and Nintendo wanted to control the market. And they had some of the more popular arcade games, and so they felt entitled. They were like, we're going to control this. So they signed exclusivity deals. So when Fantasy Zone came out for the Master System, Tengen said, we're going to make money off that program because we're going to help Sega funnel some of their games onto that system. And that's how we had Afterburner, Alien Syndrome, Fantasy Zone, excellent games, all of them for the NES. I'm not picky. I love those games. I love Black Cart Tengen games. Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Love that game. Gauntlet. I love that game. One game I didn't like was Tetris. I thought the Nintendo Tetris was better than the Tengen Tetris. All right, let's go ahead and soften the graphics on this already cartoony game. There. Look how great that made it immediately. It went from stair-steppy, pixely. Now look at that. It looks drawn. They look like little cartoon characters. It is a massive improvement. And I'm not just blowing sunshine up your butt on this one. This is a massive graphical improvement to soften the pixel edges and double the resolution. It breathes new life into the game. Might make you want to try it out again. And this game's actually fun. Now, of course, when I was young, I thought this was a stupid cartoony game that I would never want to play. I would rather play Alien Storm and be a, bodysuit wearing space Elvis that shoots trash can aliens with, the futuristic version of Tyrus Flare with a laser gun. Sure, that's the games I was into. I loved Golden Axe, Shinobi. I still think Shinobi 3 is one of the best 16-bit games ever made. There is nothing on the Super Nintendo that comes anywhere near the awesomeness of certain Sega Genesis games. Like, there's no Golden Axe 2 or 3 or 1 for the Super Nintendo. There's no Shinobi 3 for the Super Nintendo. There's no, Alien Storm? Oh my god. Or wait, no, what was it called? Alien Soldier. That's what it was. Oh god, that game's amazing. That looks as close. Okay, let's look at Alien Soldier. Now this ROM that I'm playing is not the same as the original English conversion, which says graphics shock, sound shock, system shock. Now is the time for the 68,000 heart on fire. That's exclusive to the US version. This is based on the Virtual Console version that is distributed with multi-cards. But the graphics itself, the game itself, other than that minor change, is identical. And the story's retarded. Or I guess it's amazing if you don't mind a bird-headed warrior story about weird aliens and stuff like that. Okay, whatever. Okay, here we go. For Mega Driver's Custom. With voice. This game looks like a Neo Geo game on the Sega Genesis. It's so good graphically, and the demo is magnificent because it shows the bosses. Like, you can kind of learn a little bit about how to fight the bosses in this game just by watching the demo. So this is the resolution doubled. And once you figure out how to play this game, it's incredible. I bought a reproduction of this from my Sega Genesis. I'm going to turn the sound down just a little bit so I'm not yelling at the microphone. Now, one thing you can do, and they knew about this back in the day, is take a Model 1 Sega Genesis, in my opinion the best version of the Sega Genesis, and you can easily convert it to a Mega Drive. Now in Japan, the Mega Drive could play the majority of titles, but not all of them. Some of them were exclusive to the US system, and vice versa. The US system, certain games, like this one actually, the Japanese version of this game won't play on a US system. You can very easily either install a switch to change regions, or just turn it into a Mega Drive, and I've done that. Turning it into a Mega Drive is just cutting one trace. That's it. And cutting the trace and installing a switch that then rejoins the trace gives you a region switch, and you can switch between Japan and US. It's that easy. Absolutely identical systems. Now, controversial topic. People talked, and I got an argument online about this too, about the Neo Geo, right? The Neo Geo AES is the arcade at home. It is absolutely identical in every way. And I actually did some homework about that long ago because I was thinking of buying an AES system. And really the AES system was nearly as much as just buying an arcade cabinet and having it put in your freaking home. It was like $700 and the games were hundreds of dollars. And I think the cabinet might have been $1,100 or $1,200 and the games were cheaper. The cartridges to buy for the arcade machine were cheaper. Now, what are the differences between the Neo Geo AES and the Neo Geo MVS? Well, the Neo Geo MVS says insert coin on the games. The Neo Geo AES says press start. But there are other differences. I've read that the type of RAM that's in the AES doesn't produce as many effects. So in a game where there's like 10 little puffs of fire behind a character, there might be 8 on the AES version of the game. They are identical games though. The games were programmed to work on both systems. So in that AES game for your Neo Geo is the exact same ROM as the cartridge that would go into the arcade machine. But what's the big difference between the two? Well, you're plugging an AES into an RCA input jack on your TV. A television is not the same as an arcade monitor. The hertz of an arcade monitor is usually lower. The color is sharper. The gradient pixels, there's no comb filter like what's on a television. The brightness of a television is usually blurrier and brighter, so you can see it from across a room. They are not absolutely identical. But if you say that to somebody in a forum, get ready to be beaten to death by trolls, okay? Because they refuse to acknowledge that an AES is not absolutely identical to an MVS. I would also argue that if you want a better experience with Neo Geo, you should get a consoleized MVS and use arcade cartridges rather than buy an AES system, which today is just a ridiculously overpriced collectible. One thing I would never do, though, is buy a Neo Geo CD system, because they are the slowest system. The originals were single speed CD-ROM, and they took minutes to load anything, and they had loading times constantly. They had the same graphics, and they had some games that were exclusive to the Neo Geo CD, but the only real way to play Neo Geo CD and not be driven crazy by loading times is to either emulate it or go with some SD card adapter or something that eliminates the disc entirely. So like Cross Swords 2, there's a version of League Bowling that was only for the Neo Geo CD. But for the most part, the Neo Geo CD was a failed system for hardware limitations. And the AES is not 100% identical to the MVS. Sorry, we can argue this all you want. Yeah, so they're not absolutely exactly the same. So, I'm going to hit softening. Here we go. This game is so bodacious. Watching a long play, professional playthrough of this game is incredible. One of these days, I'm going to use an older emulator that lets you access the graphics buffer of this game while it's in play. And I'm going to redraw the main character to be like a beautiful anime girl or something, like Miku or Asuka or something like that. And then this game will be officially perfect. Like, the one thing that's bad about it, and I don't know why they chose to do this, is that you're a bird-headed superhuman. That's just, it could have been the Troubleshooters, come on. It could have been a third iteration of Tyrus Flare. It could have been something like that. It could have been Sailor Moon. It could have been Blaze Fielding or whatever. It had to be a crowfoot bird-headed mutant warrior. But doesn't it just look like a Neo Geo game? Like, the graphics are so good. So why do I think the N64 is Nintendo's last best system? Well, it is actually natively backwards compatible with the Nintendo, with the NES. It can play NES games. Originally, certain games that came out for the GameCube were going to come out for the N64. One of them, I think, was going to be Animal Crossing. So it was probably going to be a DD game, though, like the double disc or whatever, the disc system that was going to come out for the N64. So they made a deal with ATI and they made the GameCube instead. And really all the Wii is a GameCube with remote controls. That's why it's natively backwards compatible with GameCube games. It can read both discs because it has a disc drive that's full size instead of the smaller one. It has 4 game ports. It plays GameCube games. It's not emulating GameCube games. It is a GameCube. And it was smart to do that, and I love the Wii. But the effect of the Wii wears off quickly, and then it just kind of sits there. Like, here's what happened the first time you played a Wii. You went, oh, it's got bowling. Okay. You got your Wiimote. You stood in a bowling stance in front of your television. You held up the Wiimote like a bowling ball. You took a couple steps, you reached back, you bowled, and then you got a strike. And you're like, oh my God, that felt like real bowling. I'm a bowler on it. And then you played it over and over again. It's so awesome. 2 months later, you were laying sideways on your couch covered in a layer of Cheeto dust, barely holding that remote with any cohesion and just barely flicking your wrist and hitting the trigger, strike. Hitting the trigger, strike. It wears off and you realize that this is like it's a kind of, not really a fluke, but you know, it's really not what it looks like on the surface. It's a repackaged GameCube. And the GameCube was great, but there weren't enough good titles for it. Like, the best thing the GameCube had was that around that time, new graphics methods had been come up with. The math required to make multifaceted, polygonal, three-dimensional characters was getting excessive. And so someone came up with bump mapping and different mapping methods so that you could just put really perfect three-dimensional mapping with textures on your characters. One of the first efforts of this was the Resident Evil 0 and Resident Evil Remake, the high definition. And those were exclusives for the GameCube for a short time. They still look good today. They stand today. The reason they look the way they look is because all of the backgrounds are all super high resolution, high color still images with some, you know, some mapping where things go behind some of the images. But then the three-dimensional characters have full access to that ATI graphics chipset that's on the GameCube, and it gives you almost photorealistic, beautiful graphics. I mean, Jill in that game is so beautiful. Whoever designed her face, she is like, I don't know, she's like supermodel, but even prettier. She's super, super beautiful. Same with Rebecca in Resident Evil 0. She is really stunningly beautiful. And the models are as good today as they were then. No system had anything that looked as good as the Resident Evil 0 and Resident Evil remakes on the GameCube. But that set the standard for all of the games in the future from that point on. Everything had to use similar methods, and they did. Now, the N64 though, there are lots of reasons why I love it. Cartridges that last forever. The controller's pretty cool. Exclusive games that played really great on the system, but also unique conversions. And what I mean by that is, I was into computers. I loved Gex Enter the Gecko, right? So if I play Gex Enter the Gecko on the computer with a 3DFX graphics card, that's amazing. It sounds good. It's got lots of Dana Gould's comedy voice samples, an excellent video game, really super fun and funny, and it's great. But then it came out for the PlayStation, and it came out for the N64. Well, on the N64, it looked really, really good. But of course, it wasn't exactly the same as the computer version. The PlayStation version tried to be like the computer version. But to make it work, they had to cut out the randomness of the comedy voice samples from Dana Gould. It had to cut out some of the frame rate. It had to cut out some of the resolution. It didn't play as good. It didn't look as good. But you can tell that the PlayStation version was trying to be the computer version. The N64 version seemed to kind of be like it was trying to be its own thing that was as good, but in its own light. And so, it's better. It's just better. I would pick that over either of the other ones, mainly because 3DFX games are hard to get to work without emulation in today's world. And the game is instant. There's little or no loading times. You can save your game. It's got all the voice samples. It plays great. Like Rogue Squadron. Amazing video game. It plays great, looks great. My son, he loves games on the N64, like Mario 64. Excellent video game. Mario Kart. Super good. Plays great, looks great. Lego Racers. Build your own race cars. Looks great. These were PC games that sucked on the PlayStation but were good on the N64. And they weren't good because the N64 was, you know, the same graphics as a computer. It had its own graphics thing going on with like softening and stuff like that. I think they did a great job with the system. They also had exclusives. Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, they're, you know, excellent. They're good today. They're excellent video games. GoldenEye was pretty good. I didn't care as much about that, you know, as like some of the other games. Jet Force Gemini, loved that game. That was an exclusive. Most of the exclusives for the N64 were truly, you know, masterful video games. So yeah, the N64 has a place in my heart. Okay. Now, this game, back in the day, I played it in the arcade. Flipped the car, crashed. Wow. When I saw it came out for the Genesis, I was like, why bother? I was never interested in it, you know, 30 years ago. Today, it's one of my favorite games of all time. I mean, I absolutely love it. And I think the Sega Genesis version is the best version of this game. For lots of reasons. I love the music, love the graphics, love the gameplay, love everything about it. I've beaten it. The only way to really beat the game is to beat every avenue, every truncation, and then you'll get the true ending. And I've done that. It's a lot of fun. This is with the smoothing effect on. I really love it. Now, one thing about this game, though, that actually makes it better than the arcade and better than most of the other versions of the game, maybe all the other versions of the game. For whatever reason, when they made this game in the arcade, they mirrored the car down the middle to where when the car turns, the symbol, the horse symbol on the back of the car also turns because the back graphic is being mirrored. So when, now that maybe that saves them a little tiny bit of ROM space or something. When they made it for the Sega Genesis, they didn't do that. So that horse on the back of that Ferrari is pointed the proper direction the entire time you play this game. When you turn the car right or left, the back of that car looks the way it's supposed to. Now, I've said something that might be controversial, okay? It probably is, and it's just kind of a silly notion, okay? But this is a European sports car, right? And I'm sure, yeah, they make American versions of it and stuff. That's fine. But if this is a European sports car and it wasn't made in America, wouldn't that mean that the steering wheel is on the right side of the car? And if the steering wheel is on the right side of the car, wouldn't that mean that it's the woman that's actually driving the car and the guy is riding along? Now, you could say, but you see the guy's left arm is up, right? But that could also indicate that he's relaxing, that he's not actually driving. The woman's arms are in front of her, meaning she could be holding the two low positions of the steering wheel, and then her left hand is free to operate the gear shift. So also there are instances when you wreck and you flip the car where she actually points at the guy. She's driving and she's going, "You caused me to wreck." There are parts of the game where you win and the whole crowd of people actually walk past the guy and pick the woman up and throw her up in the air like she's celebrating. There's even where someone comes out with a trophy and they go past the guy and they give it to the girl. So there's at least a few reasons to believe, and I'm sure I'm wrong, this is the dude driving his girlfriend, she's having fun, right? But there are at least a few reasons to believe that it's the girl that's driving this car. Okay, so how about that? Now, if Sega wasn't stupid, just like with the FM chip for the Master System, leaving that out of the system was stupid. Just like Jack Trammell leaving the Pokey chip out of the 7800 was stupid. Leaving the scaler chip out of the Sega Genesis was stupid. It was truly stupid, because the scaler chip would have made it so they could do near arcade perfect reproductions of super scalers, and they would have fit on these cartridges. What you're seeing now is like a software scaling effect, where they are, either using different drawings entirely, or they're like doubling the width and height of, or I should say, starting with shrunken versions of the graphics. And because of that, there's no like perfect smoothness, and they have to cut way back on the amount of graphics they can have. But if you want to see scaling on a Sega system, just look at Batman Returns for the Sega CD. The Sega CD system has a scaler chip, and it's used in the driving part of Batman Returns, which, you can actually choose that as the game when you play it. You can choose to play the side-scrolling arcade missions and the driving part, or just one or the other. And the driving part of that game is a game in itself. It's worthy of its own recognition because of how good it is. So it has real scaling, and there are several Sega CD games that use the real scaling chip. It would have been an incredible improvement on the system, and the games could have, so many games could have used it. You could have had Samurai Showdown actually scale. You could have had Art of Fighting scale the fighters. You could have had any Sega Super Scaler actually scale the graphics, and then therefore it could have had much more graphics. Yes, they would have been lower color, but you would have had much better Super Scaler games. And games that use the software scaling perfectly, like Road Rash, they did an excellent job with the limitations of the system. And that's in part because they designed those games for use on 16-bit home computers, like the Amiga or the Atari ST. And remember, those games were not licensed by Sega. Sega didn't want Road Rash on the Sega Genesis. Accolade and Electronic Arts and stuff had to go and make their own stuff, and that's why they have the yellow tab Electronic Arts cartridges. They were just porting 16-bit computer games over, which are significantly better, because the Sega Genesis at the time was $150 or less. The cartridges were $30 to $50, or some of them were $20, or on sale. So you could get Road Rash by buying a $1,000 computer and then buying a $30 or $40 disc game, where you had to choose background music or sound effects, one or the other, not both, where you had to have loading time off of a 3.5-inch floppy disk, and you had to use a one-button controller to play that game. Or you could spend, so now we've spent what, $1,100 or more dollars for that stuff, the controller, the game, and the system. Or you can buy a $150 Sega Genesis and a $40 Road Rash cartridge, and you have a better experience, because you have passwords, you have music and sound effects, you have no loading times. And so that's really what was happening with Electronic Arts, is they were giving you a better experience at home than you could have even had with computers at the time. And Sega wanted you to buy Hang On and not Road Rash. They wanted you to buy, whatever sports talk football, and not Madden, or whatever was coming out from Electronic. And now Electronic Arts, Populous 2, goodness, so many amazing video games were ported over through Electronic Arts, to where, those long cartridges with the little yellow tabs, they're just must-have. Just like with the Black Cart Tengen games for the NES, a lot of them I would say are just must-have games for your system. And I have most of them. I have most of the Black Cart Tengen games. I think I'm missing maybe one game that's a Black Cart Tengen game. And I have several of the Electronic Arts long cartridges for the Sega Genesis. Some of them are some of my favorite games. Mutant League Football. It's one of my favorite games and one of the best 16-bit football games ever made. So yeah, Outrun is excellent. Okay, next up, let's go ahead and show some Nintendo games. Okay. This is double resolution without pixel softening. One of the best Nintendo games. What really must be like a Ninja Gaiden game with redrawn graphics. You know, when does Batman fight against little, you know, whatever, foot trap, rolling robot foot traps, guys with flamethrowers, you know, little like Russian attack foot soldiers. Yes, the cinemas are Batman. The main character is Batman. But every single other thing about the game, other than like the last boss, most of it is not Batman. Even though, yeah, it's a great game. And it's fine to do that. They did that with Doki Doki Panic to make the best Mario game. Why not? Sounds like there's some sound chip inaccuracies. This is on a Retro Duo, by the way, which is my favorite emulator system of all time. Alright, now I'm going to enable softening. There, that's with the resolution doubling and softening. And I can see a total difference. Looks way better. Nice and clean. Like drawn art instead of pixel art, as much as it can be with just doubled resolution. Now they made cartridges you could buy for your Super Nintendo that were called, let's see, the Retro Gen, and what was the other one called? Retro something. I have both of them, and with they have a cord that comes out of the side of the cartridge that plugs into your TV, and a cord I think that plugs into like power or something, or maybe the power comes from it. Either way, if you use that cartridge, the Retro Duo, or I mean the Retro Gen, I mean, with a Retro Duo system, then you don't have to plug anything extra into it. It automatically powers and uses the cartridge through its own video output. It was made to be compatible with original systems or the Retro Duo, and it's better with the Retro Duo. You don't want to have to deal with all the extra cables and shit coming out of the side of the cartridge. So this is a Retro Duo that also has a Retro Gen cartridge. And what that does is makes it so you have Famicom, NES, Super Nintendo, Super Famicom, Mega Drive, Genesis, and Master System compatibility all through the Retro Duo. And it's the Mascot Edition, so it's Sonic Blue with cool yellow buttons and switches. And it can use Super Nintendo controllers for any of those games. And so I have some aftermarket Super Nintendo style, but not controllers. Okay, let's go ahead and play it. Best Batmobile ever, 89 Batman. Although it's debatable whether George Clooney wasn't the best Batman from Hollywood. I actually really love Batman and Robin. Uma Thurman steals the whole show. She is magnificent. And I love George Clooney as Batman. So what you get with Batman and Robin is kind of like a faithful 360 kind of return to the stupid campiness of the 60s Batman show. It's like it gets softened up by Batman Forever, where you get the Robin story arc and Val Kilmer as a magnificent Batman, right? But then, you know, everybody hates that when they pick on it. I think it's magnificent. I love it. I really love George Clooney as Batman. He's great. He looks perfect. I don't get why people are so picky about the game. Okay, this is what you do in this game. I don't even know what I'm doing here. Okay? I'm just showing what you do. Batman doesn't do this though. I've never seen Batman cling to the side of a wall like Ninja Gaiden. Okay, he doesn't do that in any. Well, maybe with his. Maybe once or twice in a comic, he's hanging on the side of the building. I don't know. Not a play mechanic I would immediately associate with Batman. Don't those soldiers look like the bad guys from Russian Attack that you knife? So, you know, the way I feel about it, and I've said this in my videos before, is that people are too picky. People are spoiled, rotten, entitled little brats that nitpick and bitch about every little tiny thing, and so they all have an opinion about everything, and they all hate on everything. I'm the opposite. I actually find reasons to love something, even if it's easily rejectable. Does that mean I love everything? No, I don't. But I do find it easier to enjoy things when I don't. Oh, I'm not overly critical about every little thing, right? So was Batman and Robin cheesy? Kind of, but what Batman and Robin did was you know, a combination. First off, it was Schumacher, okay, who I guess maybe he's flaming homosexual or something. I don't know. I don't care. That doesn't offend me in the slightest bit. It means nothing to me. But it's the first Batman where you had intentional focusing on Batman's ass, where you had the continuation of the nipple suit from Forever. It was a, you know, both masculine and feminine empowering movie with Robin's maturing story arc, arguably best bad guy ever, Uma Thurman, Poison Ivy. It is an excellent movie. It's like if the 60s Batman was the Tim Burton Batman. That's really what it was like. And it had some great one-liners, great jokes, and I think that when people rate and belittle and berate and judge everything, and they say that George Clooney was the worst or that movie was the worst, that couldn't be further from the truth. I think that George Clooney was a perfect Batman. He looked more like Batman than most of the other ones that they chose. Like Michael Keaton was too short. He looked like, you know, Michael Keaton. I mean, he's from all these other movies. He's in like a midlife crisis movie about drug use and alcoholism and sobriety. He was Beetlejuice. He was in a ton of great movies, right? But he wasn't a 6.5 foot tall, you know, little boy trapped in a man's body, ninja warrior with endless, you know, Sherlock Holmes genius and resources, right? He wasn't that. He He didn't bling that. He worked with Burton. Burton wanted somebody that he knew he could work with, that was unique for the role and could work with it. It's a great idea, but does Michael Keaton just come off as being... Okay, the one thing Michael Keaton's got that's kind of scary and Batman-ish about him, pointy eyebrows. There we go, he's got pointy eyebrows. Was he like the perfect Batman? No. Val Kilmer. Val Kilmer looks great, he's tall, he's muscular, he plays a good rich guy, right? But he's got a pretty big mouth to fit into that cowl, and he doesn't really come off as the Bruce Wayne type, you know? I mean, he really isn't. I wouldn't think of him if I think of Bruce Wayne. Of the three, Michael Keaton, Val Kilmer, and George Clooney, which one actually looks like Bruce Wayne? George Clooney, hands down. He looks like a tall, strong, rich guy, kind of maybe a little boy trapped in a man's body, kind of, you know, baby face image. And George Clooney is a incredibly good actor, and he did a great job. He looked great in the bat suit. Why do people hate on that movie? No reason to, right? Okay. Okay. Now it's a lot of blurriness on this. My camera doesn't like solid colors of any type. So much black on the screen, it's gonna not want to be sharp about it here. And this is on a multi-cart that is from China that actually cuts out the title screen, kind of. It just has like press start or whatever. Other than that, it is Gradius. The lengths I have to go to get my Gradius. Now this is resolution double. So, but when you look at all those Batman movies, right, everyone pretty much sums it up in one big overall looming conference, right? Like, okay, what's the original '89 Batman? Okay, it's Jack Nicholson. That's it. Jack Nicholson ruled the film. He made the he basically reworked that original confirmation that the bad guys were the spice of the show. Even the '60s Batman was that way. Cesar Romero, he was incredible as the Joker. The Riddler that they had then was perfect. The bad guys were excellent. Even the crappy bad guys were good in the '60s Batman, right? Even though the '60s Batman, you know, when you're a 7-year-old kid, it's the greatest thing ever. But when you mature, you're like, oh my God, I like that. That's the most terrible thing I've ever seen in my life. And there are people out there that still say the '60s Batman is the best thing ever, right? But then '89 Batman was Jack Nicholson. Okay, now we're going to hit the smoothing button. There we go. So, what was Batman 2? Batman 2 was, most people didn't like the movie. I loved it. And it was Michelle Pfeiffer. Michelle Pfeiffer and Christopher Walken to a degree. Pretty much, you know, well, actually, Danny DeVito did a great job in that movie too. I think you could weigh that it was like an effort of all three. Like Max Schreck was an excellent bad guy. The redemption arc of Catwoman was magnificent. The Penguin was well thought out and disgusting and acted to perfection by Danny DeVito. I love the movie. My friend said when he watched Batman Return, it made him have to go to the bathroom. Okay, I love the movie. I love that Michelle Pfeiffer actually knocked the heads off of mannequins with a whip in that movie. That is awesome. Okay, I love that movie. Nothing wrong with it at all. I love everything about it. I can watch it. Now, okay, so we'll just say what was the best part about it. Maybe Michelle Pfeiffer or Danny DeVito. Really great bad guys in the movie, okay? Then we have Batman Forever. Val Kilmer. Okay, seriously. Jim Carrey rules that film. He is magnificent. The Riddler by Jim Carrey. I love Two-Face. I won't say it's the greatest thing that, you know, that he ever did, but it worked. It really had a comic appeal to it. It was kind of campy and cheesy and fun too, but it was also grotesque. I loved how he was divided. They really overdid the dark side, light side, split personality effect of Two-Face. Very much like comics and stuff. It's a great movie. I loved it. I didn't really like the romance BS, but it was necessary. I get why it was there. I also didn't like that it was. Well, I think again it was necessary, but the psychoanalyzing, the backdrop of Batman being psychoanalyzed, it's revealing to the cinema goer who isn't a comic book aficionado and who doesn't know everything there is to know about Batman that he's a little boy trapped in a man's body that's constantly recycling and wearing the guilt of the death of his parents, and he can't escape it, right? So that's it attaches to that. So, okay. Original 60s Batman was the bad guys were awesome. 89 Batman was Jack Nicholson rules. Batman Returns is Michelle Pfeiffer, maybe Danny DeVito, really great bad guy and excellent acting. Okay, and then we've got Batman Forever. Jim Carrey is amazing in that film, and other bad guys are amazing in the film. Val Kilmer does a great job as Batman. Then we have Batman and Robin. Uma Thurman, I think, steals the movie. She's incredible, but George Clooney is an excellent Batman. I think he works totally perfectly right along with it. Now, honestly, when they redid Batman, I kind of liked, Batman Begins. It was okay. But then I broke off, and I didn't like that Christian Bale was like intentionally altering and growly scowling his voice. I didn't like it. I didn't like the thing he was doing with Batman's voice. Okay, you don't need to disguise Batman's voice because no one knows the rich guy to begin with. He's one of those elitist rich kids that is only in crowds of the drunkest, richest socialites. He is not everywhere to where people would immediately recognize his voice if they... Again, Batman is never anywhere. He's always in the dark dealing with bad guys. There was absolutely no reason for Batman to disguise his voice like that. And if he is going to disguise his voice, he doesn't need to disguise it by growling like an animal like Bale did. I think it ruined Batman. Okay. So, what was the best thing about those movies? Joker was amazing. He was a genius. The character was awesome. That was incredible. The story was okay, but I wouldn't say it was really better than it was. Then we've got the new. Batman versus Superman and Justice League Batman, which is arguably the best Batman ever, right? Because Ben Affleck is a great, big, tall, muscular, little boy, lost in his eyes, kind of, he's a man, but he's kind of trapped. You can feel it. The acting is perfect. The image is perfect. Straight out of the comic. He's good, but he's also flawed in his logic. He's a damaged persona. They capture that, but it doesn't become overly psychoanalytical. It's an excellent Batman, right? And I thought it was really funny at the end of Flash when he's trying to fix the broken timelines, and then the Batman that comes to him at the end of it is George Clooney. No problem with that at all. I think it's hilarious. And where everyone else is going to laugh like they totally screwed up because George Clooney's Batman, I'm like, okay, why not? Let's have George Clooney be Batman in one of these newer movies. They're not going to do that. It was his, comedic use for the end of it because they'd recycled everyone's favorite Batman for that movie. But, I wouldn't have a problem with that. George Clooney did a great job as Batman, right? This isn't working well. I think the image is too blurry. Let's have another game. Okay, to follow the theme of games that I used to hate and think were stupid when I was a kid that I really love now, we have Burger Time, which I'd love to make my own version of Burger Time for the 2600. The 2600 version of the game is terrible. it really was just like they threw it out the door crap. I know I could do better than what they did, 100% positive. I mean, I could have 3 color sprites for all the bad guys, so how about that? That immediately would be better. But this game is addictive and fun. So yeah, I really like the smoothed out graphics. They look really good. And it's a game that's kind of cartoony, right? So it benefits from that. So let's look at it just resolution doubled. Okay. Here we go. This is just double resolution, the ×2. And you can see all the pixels. All the pixels are all standard. The egg has stair-stepping pixel effect, little sausage monsters, and I don't really know what. This guy woke up and someone put acid in his coffee and then he went to work, right? And then he's like, he influenced the future though, because today we have videos of kids working at restaurants and they're standing in the bucket of lettuce and they're farting on your salami and they're blowing their nose in your pizza crust and stuff, and you know, they're burger time in it. That's what they're doing. But this game is excellent and it's so much fun. Whoever came up with this idea, you know, people were on acid in the 80s when they came up with this crap. Like, what game are you making? Oh, you're a burger chef and you're running from giant condiments that are chasing after you while walking on the parts of the burger that make them fall to create the burger. Who came up with this game? What? Who came? Okay, here's some other, in some other room where people were coming up with video games. They were like, what game are you going to make? And he was like, Spaceship Go Blast. Okay, hey, let's do it. Let's do Spaceship Go Zap. Okay, let's Spaceship Go Zap. There's Spaceship, Bad Guy Spaceship, Spaceship Go Zap, right? But then somewhere in some room somewhere, some guy was like, oh, how about a game where you're a burger chef and you're running from giant sausages and eggs and pickles and stuff, and you're building burgers, but you're building them by running across the tops of the parts of the burger. The burgers fall down and crush the condiments that are chasing you down, and when you're done, you've formed the 4 burgers right now. My first son used to watch my wife play Burger Time on one of our arcade machines, and he was just a little guy, and he just was mesmerized by that game, right? So, you know, she'd be, whatever, come home from work or be coming out of, you know, from outside or something, and then he'd come up to her and go, will you play the game where you make the 4 delicious burgers? And this meant that he wanted to sit there and watch her play Burger Time because of how fun just watching this silly game is. And, you know, on a side note, though, they've come up with different versions of this game. I think it was Bob DiCrescenzo, the popular home brewer who does tons of games for 7800, made a game called Beef Drop. And I thought, oh man, it's going to be great. But when I played it, I think it plays too fast. You know, no insulting him or anything. Maybe that's how the arcade was or something. But now I also played one because I'm a BASIC enthusiast. I absolutely love BASIC. I love to try to make amazing games with BASIC. It's one of my, I just love it. So someone actually made a Burger Time clone using BASIC for the Atari 8-bit computer. And the game is magnificent. Like, it plays the right speed, the graphics are excellent, it's full color, it plays really good. It's better. I gotta say it's better than Beef Drop, even though Beef Drop looks really, really good. I think the play mechanics in it need to be tweaked a little bit. And it could just be, maybe it's an emulator I played it on. I didn't play it on the actual 7800. It could just be that the emulator I'm playing it on plays the game too fast, I guess. Although I've never seen that happen with any other 7800 games. I guess in that rare instance it could be that. But I do believe it probably just plays too fast. Maybe they like that. Makes it harder and more challenging. So now let's hit the softening button. There we go. And now immediately, everything looks like a cartoon. It all looks like it was like painted like a cartoon. It looks better than what the Nintendo can do, just with that simple softening effect. I love it. It's so good. It's just, it looks wonderful. But honestly, there's a guy that works with, on the subject of Batman, Bat in the Sun. Aaron Shanky, he's a guy that does, I think he owns a comic store or something, but he also does super power beatdown, where they have what ifs, like what if Wonder Woman took on Thor, or what if the Incredible Hulk took on Superman or something, like lots of crossovers and stuff. And they are super high quality, like movie tier, movie level productions, where like their Wolverine versus Predator was on a whole other level. Like, okay, they have this company that makes motorcycle clothes, like super thick, so you survive from a road rash incident, right? Like where you crash. And they've got one that looks like a Wolverine suit. Looks like his classic Wolverine suit. So they got this guy with a Wolverine helmet and that motorcycle suit thing on, right? And then he's fighting against the Predator, like the guy that's invisible alien, hunts humans and stuff like that, right? And it is so good. It's just like amazing. Now he does Batman stuff, and he has an actor that always plays Batman in his little shows, right? Like they did was Batman versus Darth Vader, right? And they actually did like a half-hour Batman show with this guy. I can't remember his name, but you know, just look it up. Bat in the Sun, and you'll find it. Aaron Shanky or Superpower Beatdown. All of those will probably pop the stuff up. And I really think he was like the best Batman that I ever saw, like out of any of them. And you know, he's an actor, of course, but he's not playing Batman in any Hollywood movie or something. And also, hands down, best Joker that I've ever seen in my entire life. Hands down. No, there is no one else that even comes close, is Aaron Shanky. He does Joker without any makeup, and he's better than any Joker that I've ever seen in my whole life. He's better than any Hollywood actor, he is perfect. And he also plays Nightwing in a couple of his own productions and does an excellent job as Nightwing. But he's the best Joker I've ever seen. And the guy he's got playing Batman is the best Batman that I've ever seen. Hands down. Like, he's believable. Like, he is. Like, they just found Batman. He's Bruce Wayne. That's him. So look it up. Look up the Bat in the Sun, Superpower Beatdown, and check out Aaron Shanky as the Joker or this guy as Batman. Magnificent. Okay, here we go. Let's follow a theme. Now, is the Super Nintendo better than the Sega Genesis? Oh, hell no. No, it is not. It's a different thing altogether. It's almost experimental with Mode 7 and with a lower resolution, very high sprite count, high color. Certain Super Nintendo games, though, are definitely better than the Genesis offerings. And with that being said, Batman Returns is so infinitely better on the Super Nintendo than the cartridge version of the game for the Sega Genesis. There really is no comparison. This is one of the coolest video games. As Batman, you can throw clowns into the wall and smash their heads together and just all kinds of cool moves. This is Final Fight, if Final Fight was Batman Returns. Okay, so now we have the doubled resolution. Now, the Super Nintendo came out in the US, I think, in '92, if I remember correctly. By that time, the Sega Genesis, which came out in '89, was 3 years old, but it had been out since '88, and I think in Japan the Super Famicom maybe 1990 or '91. When you have 3-year gaps, when hardware is advancing at the degree that it was then, it should be better. Of course it should be. But it actually is a lower resolution system than the Mega Drive Genesis. But it's a higher color system. It has some limitations, of course. One of the good things about the Super Nintendo is that it has this kind of like MIDI canned kind of sound chip. I guess it's one of the good things and one of the bad things. If you don't like the squeaky, tooty, canned kind of sounds it produces, but it does have like an instrument set, and so people programming games for it could very easily make like this really excellent music. Whereas with the Sega Genesis and Mega Drive, it had a lot to do with who your music programmer was, as to whether your game's music was awesome. You could make simple music that didn't sound very good, or you could make very, very complex music that sounded really good on the Sega Genesis. Whereas on the Super Nintendo, the music all has a similar sound of its own. And it's because it has samples. It has like kind of like almost like a MIDI, like a low bit rate MIDI chip or something. Kind of like that. The higher color gives you better stills like this. These are like high color stills that look really good. But there are, drawbacks. Like the Mode 7 effect is okay. A lot of the problems I have with the Super Nintendo are that I don't like a lot of their exclusives. It's an IP poster child. Like it's an IP billboard for Nintendo. And the ports that I really love suck on the Super Nintendo. Like I'd rather play Earthworm Jim on the Genesis. I'd rather play Zombies Ate My Neighbors on the Genesis. I'd rather play basically any port that would have been, obviously Chuck Rock better on the Genesis. Pretty much any port that was on both, I would pick the Genesis version of the game. But in this case, it's a different game altogether. Batman Returns is Final Fight, but it's Batman Returns, which is really, really great graphics. Look at that. Alright, so let's go ahead and add the softening effect. And immediately, everything looks drawn like a comic book. I mean, that looks amazing. Anywhere where the stair-stepping effect might have repulsed you, suppose you don't like pixels, it looks like real. It looks great. Now, I read in some places that these RetroScalers are better on smaller screens. This is a 55.5-inch TV. It's a very large TV. And I gotta say, it looks great. I mean, it looks magnificent. That's my word of the day, is magnificent. Every time I say magnificent, scream. Okay, rewatch my video, and every time I say magnificent, just scream and freak out, okay? So this was a great video. I played the crap out of this game back in the day. I like how they're just going through lots of demos. It's not going back through the Bat Cat Penguin BS with the stills over and over again and then showing lots and lots of game demos. Almost like an arcade game. And where Batman for the NES might as well have just been a redrawn Ninja Gaiden game, this is Batman. This is all the art, all the characters, all the backgrounds. all the items, even though it is a redraw of like a Final Fight engine, it is distinctly Batman. So Konami did a, you know, magnificent job with this game. Let's see if it will skip down. It's probably not. Here we go. Very well made game. And honestly, even though I'm guilty of this, I don't like games that don't have demos. Both of my games don't have demos because they're Atari 2600 games. But there are 2600 games with demos. A lot of them have demos, actually. I didn't really like the redone suit, where instead of fake abs, he has like a air conditioning vent for an abdomen. Whatever, though, it's fine. You know, he's basically saying, look, it's the suit, it's not me. Hey, at least I don't have to wear a suit with fake muscles. Like, okay, fine, I'm going to change it. Now it's got vent flaps. So, one of the great games for the Super Nintendo that I really love, which made up for the infuriating experience that was Final Fight for the Super Nintendo. Just like with Double Dragon, the exact same thing happened to me. It happened to everyone. You played Double Dragon in the arcade, you found out it was coming out for the Nintendo, bought it for the Nintendo, and it was single dragon. There's no two-player mode, and you have to earn all of your moves. It's basically a story mode fighting game with Double Dragon as the art, as the characters. They knew people wouldn't like that, so they threw in a fighting game built into it with larger characters where you could fight each other, right? But still, it's single dragon. Final Fight did exactly the same thing. You played Final Fight in the arcade, 2-player co-op, 3 characters to choose from. You played it, you loved it, you bought it for Super Nintendo. It's a single player game with only 2 characters. And so it's like, crap, why did you do that? So then when this game came out, if I remember correctly, this is a 2-player co-op game, and to make up for that, you know, soiling of the pants that was the first Final Fight game for the Super Nintendo, they added a smoking hot ninja girl who more than makes up for it. Now you got a suave debonair with his wrestler ex-mayor and an amazing, beautiful ninja girl. It makes up for it. 2 and 3 are great. Are they as good as Streets of Rage 2 and Streets of Rage 3? Hell no. This game doesn't compare. You can compare them, but it doesn't compare to Streets of Rage. Okay, in Streets of Rage, you can pick up your friend and throw them into the bad guys. Okay, Streets of Rage is a better video game. Do I love Maki? Oh yeah, she's my waifu, whatever. That's great. Okay, she's awesome. They're giving you butt cheeks. Okay, you get free butt cheeks in this game. They're making up for the lack of guy and the 1-player mode of the first Final Fight by giving you 2-player co-op and butt cheeks. So you win. It's a win-win. So now let's activate softening. Soften those butt cheeks. There we go. Okay. But I love this game though. I also love the third one. Now don't get me wrong though, Capcom is the greatest of all time. You know, one of my favorite games of all time is Resident Evil 2 Remake. Also Resident Evil 4 Remake and Resident Evil 4 HD. I love those games. They're some of my favorite video game experiences that I've ever had. I mean, I can play any of those games right now, and I've played them hundreds of times. They just don't get old, and they don't wear out, and they're always fun, and they're always good. I probably will never play Final Fight for the Super Nintendo ever again because I can play it for the Sega CD and I love it. Or I can play the new homebrew version of it for the Genesis that's got all of the missing stuff from the Sega CD version and it's on a cartridge. So we live in a great time for this kind of stuff. I love Maki. Wow, dude, I love her hair. Beautiful. She's awesome. She's basically 2/3 legs. You know, that's fine. It's better for her to be 2/3 legs than 1/3 legs, right? Okay. He's a sword collector. You know, a lot of sword collectors, they don't even know how to use a sword. So just because he's a sword collector doesn't make him a sword master, right? So whatever, it's a great game. I love the RetroScaler2X though. Okay, it's $60. It's not $300. It does the job. It's zero lag. It's very easy to use. It's really, you're just pushing one button. You push one button to change the level of effects, either pass through, double resolution, which is 2 times, or soften. That's it. And then you press one button to switch to the inputs. It has S-video, and it also has component and composite. So it has all 3 of those. From what I've seen, S-video is slightly better than the rest. It's a cleaner, better looking image, and I'll be upgrading to S-video. But yeah, what an excellent game. Okay, we'll do another couple of Super Nintendo games, and then I'm going to show some Saturn games. Okay, so here we have Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3, I think is what this is. There is no knowledge. That is not power. So you already got your first lesson for Mortal Kombat 3. There is no knowledge. That is not power. How about that? So this is resolution doubled without softening. Now I got to admit they did a good job with this game. Does it play as good as the Sega Genesis version? No. Does it look better? Yes. It looks significantly better. By the time this game came out, the Genesis really was showing its age. Although I love those systems a lot of the times for their exclusives. This was a pretty good offering. You know, I really loved them, but you know, I prefer Super Street Fighter 2 on the Sega Genesis, Mortal Kombat 2 on the Genesis and the 32X, Mortal Kombat 1 on the Genesis and the Sega CD. But yeah, this was a good one. This is a pretty good game. Alright. Katana. Beautiful. Until you look at her mouth, my God. If they all, you know, the mask on, and I don't know whose idea it was to make them all have Baraka's teeth, but wow. They get ugly really fast. Okay, now we're going to watch this in motion. And there's softening. What sound of what noise should I make when I do my bicycle kick? How about we just take this sound clip straight out of Scooby-Doo? Okay. So do your kick, okay? That's perfect. Where did you get the sound effect from? Oh, I went to a kung fu school where they were doing flying bicycle kicks. And what did they sound like? Scooby-Doo. Oh, okay. Wow. And you can see the letters look a lot better. There's no stair-stepping. Sometimes you'll catch the ever tiniest hint of pixelization. It's impossible to eliminate 100% of it, but the softening effect really does make the game look excellent. Okay, let's see if we can't get through this. Now, okay, it makes me have to play the game, which I have no intention of playing this video game. It's okay. I want to get just a bunch of and then I'm dead. Okay, there we go. There is no knowledge. That is not power. Okay, another must-play game for the Super Nintendo. I really wish this game came out for the Mega Drive Genesis, or more games like it. I think they might have had like 1 or 2 games like this, but they were crap. Like Dynamite Duke or something. I don't even remember what it was called. Crap games, mostly punching. But look at this. Tell me that's not the cutest thing you've ever seen. And then look, there's robots. Yeah, I had to throw in the high-tech robots. Okay, let's turn on softening. And immediately it looks a multi-zillion times better. Alright. Is her name Annie Oakley in this? Like, is she supposed to be Annie Oakley or something like that? I don't know. This game's so good. Probably a $500 cartridge because of how good this game is. I don't know. This is on a multi-cart that I bought. I love this game. Look at that. It looks so much better with the softening. It looks... Oh, I love it. In there, that looks so good. Everything looks drawn. There's almost no visible pixels. Wild Guns. Gotta play it if you haven't played it yet. But no, I've decided I'm actually not going to show emulation because I would have to constantly unplug my HDMI cable and plug it into my laptop. I could do it through one of my computers, like my work computer or my gaming computer, but you know, it's just, suffice to say, this is significantly better than using a 700 watt gaming PC to play a Nintendo game. Okay? If you're using a Nintendo that uses a 9-volt power supply, okay, that's better than playing it on a 7. Now, is it using 700 watts? No, but your graphics card might be using 120 volts, and your system, your processor is using some voltage. You know, it's using more power. Definitely using. Okay, if the lights dim every time you turn on your gaming computer, that's using more power than a Nintendo or a Sega. Probably more than a Nintendo, Sega, Super Nintendo, and a Saturn all combined. So yeah, and plus the old school controllers, the real cartridges that last virtually forever. Yes, there is bit rot. Bit rot can destroy cartridges, but the solid state cartridges were just great. I love her. She's so cute. And of course there's dune buggies and robots and missiles mixed with Old West guys on horseback. What is this? It's like, let's make an Old West game. Well, what's in the Old West? Well, obviously, giant robots. Okay, what about cars? Did they invent those yet? No. What about dune buggies? Sure, why not? Let's have dune. Okay, what about laser guns? Definitely, they had laser guns in the Old West. Okay. What about missiles? Yep, missile launching robotic tanks. Those were all over the place in the Old West. Wow. Yeah, it's Annie Oakley. And Clint Eastwood, because his name's Clint. He's Clint Eastwood, a fictional character Okay, or he's an actor that portrays fictional characters that are either Old West or like badass cop characters like Dirty Harry and stuff. He's Clint Eastwood. That's an actor. But then the girl is Annie Oakley. She was like a carnival show sharpshooter, right? She'd like, I don't know, have them like, I don't know, put an apple on their head and she'd shoot it, or throw something up in the air and she'd throw cans up in the air and she'd keep shooting them so they never hit the ground and stuff like that, right? I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's what we're talking about here. It's Clint Eastwood and Annie Oakley, and they're in the Old West, but there's missile launching robotic machinery, dune buggies, and cowboys on horseback, and it's all like saloons and whorehouses everywhere. Wow. Fever dream if ever there was one, right? Oh, and there's neon lights too. We got neon lights in an Old West saloon. And there's robotic stuff everywhere. Look at this, like tubes and like some kind of robotic laser light thing up at the top. Wow. What a magnificent game. All right. Okay. If I remember correctly, this is messing up because... No, this is the first Tomb Raider. That's what this is. Okay, what I did was somebody, some amazing, magnificent person, made unfinished business for the Sega Saturn. So I downloaded it and put it on a disc, but I also said, okay, I haven't had Tomb Raider for it in a long time. I used to have it, but I sold it. So I went ahead and burned that to a disc too. So this is Tomb Raider for the Sega Saturn. And I'm hitting buttons on the Retro Duo. So of course that's not doing anything. I gotta
What's a man gotta do to get that kind of attention from you?
It's hard to say exactly, but you seem to be doing fine.
Well, great.
And this is doubling but no softening. Okay, here we go. Okay, so let's look at the title screen with resolution doubled. Now I'm going to hit the softening, and immediately it's cleaner, it's nicer. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and switch it back to just doubling. So we can do this process with the in-game graphics. I don't know where I am in this game. It could be anywhere. City of Vilcabamba, Lost Valley. I wish I remembered which was first or last. Wait a minute. Is this that game? I don't think so. Okay. And of course, we're rewarded with butt cheeks. I love Saturn though. It has games that I really love. Okay, here we go. I'm in this place. Let's spin around and look at stuff. I think there's a ball that crushes you here. Okay. So we see pixelization everywhere. It doesn't have the Z-axis jittering of the PlayStation, but it does have like some, I don't know how to put it, like some pop-up, I guess is what you'd call it, where, see that? Like as I'm moving, some of the textures just kind of appear. I remember this. Okay. Now this is Tomb Raider 1. Now if you haven't played Unfinished Business, it's a must play. It's so good. And it's hard too. Like you're in hell in one of them. Like it's fiery. And there's like demon monsters coming at you. And Okay, so now I'm going to hit softening, and there we go. Now, in this kind of game, it's kind of like a precursor to intentionally blurring your 3D game. And it plays good. It's a good playing game. It's not the PlayStation though. I'd have to say the PlayStation pretty much rules with most 3D games over the Saturn. So, you know, I'm not going to, you know, be so high on the fumes that I'm, you know, retarded about the situation. The PlayStation had its strong points. Okay. I'm trying to remember how to put my gun away. There we go. There we go. Okay, and then this is jump. Now I remember, I think you're supposed to, if you jump into the water, then it sweeps you downstream, and then you have to start the whole process over again. So I think you have to jump from one edge to the other. Now, in all honesty, guys, I've been a computer nerd forever, and I've been playing Tomb Raider ever since it first came out for the PC, and I have never liked or intentionally chosen console versions of Tomb Raider over the PC. So, you know, I've modded it, you know, and seen it all. It's better on the PC no matter what, and there's really no reason to play it on any home console ever, unless you want to torture your senses, right? So, I love this on the Saturn just because the Saturn was the underdog, but okay. What's the Saturn do? Okay, well, when it came out, there was the Titan board in the arcade, which was 32-bit, two-dimensional, sprite-driven arcade games with some 3D games. They had Sega Rally, they had Die Hard, they had Virtual Fighter, Virtual Racing, and all of these could be faithfully reproduced on the Saturn because the Saturn is based on that hardware. But at the time, Sega was really doing a good job with two-dimensional games. So when the PlayStation came out, they were like, okay, we're just going to really do everything 3D, 2D games too, but mostly just 3D out the wazoo. The Saturn had a problem with easily generating transparency. What they were doing was, because everyone was using CRT televisions at the time, they did transparency with a type of like filtering where it's just pixels, just empty spots and pixels. And because the TV saw that as basically like a transparent sheet, it was cheap and quick and easy, and it looked good. Fast forward 20-some years, everybody's looking at these on computers with high resolution. You're going to come to the conclusion that the Sega Saturn can't really handle transparencies when it can. A few games use transparencies, but really it's more that the Saturn used a cheap, empty pixel transparency effect that looked great on CRT. On CRT, you're looking at it going, hey, it looks like transparency. But what the PlayStation did was actually used a transparency layer. And so games where you need transparency, it doesn't have it, and especially in the modern types of games. Okay, so I didn't know what game was in here right away, so we're going to go ahead and put in a different game that I really like for the Saturn. There we go. Now, in case you're wondering, I have a Japanese Saturn, and the Japanese Saturn actually can be set up to be in the English language. That's part of the menu. You have to get to the spot to do that, but it is totally possible. Doesn't have a problem with it. This is with pixel softening. I'm going to go ahead and turn off pixel softening so it's just doubled resolution. There we go. Now, I used to be, kind of on the fence about Neo Geo. I thought, why bother when it's so expensive and it's basically stuck in the arcade. But then I fell in love with SNK. Just like, I love their art style, I love their games, I love their characters. it grew on me. The further I got from it just being a Capcom clone with unknowns and randos everywhere, it became more real, and where, I don't know, it was like my Don Bluth when you hate Disney for being the way it is, right? So where Capcom is Disney, SNK was like Don Bluth, right? They did amazing stuff that you love, and arguably deeper, more impactful, profound stories, and then Disney just looked pretty and kind of screwed up the story, right? Okay, here we go. Got the pixels, got the doubling, high resolution. The super good version of this game. I like this better than the PlayStation version. Now, when you compare them, though, anyone who hasn't played this on Neo Geo, and I have now, whatever, decades later, and I played it in the arcade. Like when I went to MEPS for my medical examination when trying out for the Navy, they had Metal Slug Arcade in the military, the medical facility there. So, and everywhere. It was everywhere. Like I played it in so many different places. So yeah, I played the arcade game. I played it enough to know what it was supposed to be like. But if you just compare the PlayStation with the Saturn, then you're going to go, oh, well, it has slowdown, and it has this and that and the other. But the arcade game actually had slowdown. So, it's legit. It's basically the arcade version for your Saturn or for your PlayStation. You get Metal Slug. And I'm not going to really feel sorry for SNK because so few people bought their systems. So few people bought the Neo Geo AES because of how expensive it was that eventually they were selling them in bulk to hotels. And they would have it like bolted under a TV in a hotel room, and you rent the hotel room and you could order AES games to be fed to it. Later on, the Sega Channel did that with giant apartment complexes. I actually hung out with a friend who had an apartment, and it was in one of those complexes where they had cable and everyone could pay, and it would be cheaper, right? It was like cheaper, and then everyone would have cable, and then you could pay a tiny, tiny bit more and get the Sega Channel cartridge. So he had a Genesis and the Sega Channel cartridge, and it was all like dirt cheap, so we could just sit there and play Sega games all the time. Well, they had hotels that would do that with the Neo Geo. Okay, now let's hit softening. There we go. And immediately, it looks drawn. There's the stair-stepping effect. See the monkey's butt, or whatever that is. I assume that's the monkey's butt, but I guess it could be testicle. Anyway, everything looks drawn. There's a tiny bit of stair-stepping on the Metal Slug title part there. Okay, let's play this game. This game is magnificent. Mission select. So I've already made it to the second mission, but I'll play the first one over again just for giggles. Crap. What an excellent game, though. Really. How spoiled rotten we were to have Neo Geo games. I love King of Fighters. I love Art of Fighting. I hate Fatal Fury, but I love Fatal Fury 2. I love League Bowling. League Bowling is one of my favorite games. I actually have that for my multi-card in my Dynamo HS5, but it fast forwards through the beginning of it to get to the game. And even though the game plays perfectly after that, I would rather it be like the original. So, but then the 161 game cartridge that I have, or that I want to buy, I mean, to go with the real MVS hardware, doesn't have League Bowling. So I'll have to, after converting my HS5 to a Neo Geo board, I'll have to actually buy League Bowling. So even though it has 161 games, it doesn't have League Bowling. Now maybe there's an SD card on it, and I can just, you know, possibly just buy, or not buy, but just put the ROM on an SD card or something, and then it will see it. I guess that's a possibility. But maybe not. Maybe it's like stuck inside the system, or the SD card can't be changed, and so it's strictly 161 games. So I gotta have League Bowling though. I absolutely love that game. It's one of my favorites. I also really like some of the other Neo Geo games that are less popular. One game I really don't like for Neo Geo though is Magician Lord. And that was the pack-in software with the AES. So if you bought the AES, you got Magician Lord. And it's okay, but it's not as good as Alien Soldier. It's not anywhere near as good as Alien. Alien Soldier beats Magician Lord. Crap. Jumped right into that one. So yeah. Look how good this game looks though. The softening immediately makes everything look drawn. Everything's really clean. It is excellent. For some reason my A button seems a little lower than it's supposed to be. Maybe we played it too much, but the original Sega Saturn pad is actually, here, maybe I'll turn my light on. I don't know. Kind of like a Sega 6-button pad with shoulder buttons. When they made it for the US market, they made like a big, thick, hollow, plasticky shell with kind of like squeaky kind of buttons. It wasn't very good. The thumb pad was raised, but the Japanese controller is better in my opinion. And actually the 3D controller had a better thumb pad than the US controller. Again, that's my opinion. The US controller's thumb pad had kind of like sharper edges around it, and it floated pretty high, but the buttons felt cheap, and they felt like, almost like there was a type of like kind of flexation happening when you push the buttons. And I've since, you know, taken them apart and worked on them and stuff, and they're hollow. They're like big hollow shells with a PCB and really tall floaty buttons that don't really feel good. The thumb pad, nah. But then they had the 3D controllers meant for Nights into Dreams, which again is a magnificent Saturn game. And so the analog stick would make it so you could spin circles more easily in Nights into Dreams, and then it was compatible with other games. And the thumb pad on that controller was actually really good. It was better. But this thumb pad is pretty much the same as the one that comes on the analog stick. And the Japanese controller and the Japanese systems I like better. Japanese Saturn you can get today for, I think, under $100. And then there are sought-after Saturns. There are 3 different color variants. There's a gray one, a black one, and a white one. The white ones are Japanese, some of the gray ones are Japanese, and the black ones are US and Japanese. And there are ones with circular buttons and ovular buttons. The oval shaped buttons are different than the circle ones and whatever. I think there are some slight differences to the systems. And of course today they have the Action Replay aftermarket cartridges that give you all of the megabyte upgrades, like 2 and 4 megabyte upgrades that you need for certain games that improve the games and also allow you to play backups. So I have the Action Replay cartridge that does all of that, and I have a white Japanese Saturn with the Japanese controller, and it plays all games. It's there's no region blocking or anything like that. Everything works on it, and it's in English mode. So if I start my Saturn without the cartridge in it, there it is. Drive door open, play pause, it's in English, manage memory, remove item clear, that's all in English, system settings, clock language, other settings, that's all in English. I think that's right, 8/22/2025. Yeah, it's 11 a.m. Oops. Hope I didn't just change that, let me see. I did, there we go. Wait a minute. February, March, April, May, June, July. You can change the language. Of course, when you first start this up, it's in Japanese. And if your 3-volt battery died, then you have to know which one. So look it up. Look it up online or something. And you'll see how easy it is to turn English on in your Japanese Saturn. And that was really nice of them. They could have been stingy and made it so that you have to have a US system to have English mode. But the Japanese are really fun, campy people who like to work other languages into their language, and they like to learn English and have English mixed in with their games and stuff. They're really awesome about that. So they probably were like, hey, have it be so you can have English mode on here, why not? And plus it's cheaper. You make one ROM and then that covers all bases, rather than having to, you know, make all kinds of different ROMs for different regions and stuff. So, a lot of great Saturn games. Today we have homebrews of Saturn games, and so here's a homebrew game I'm about to play, just to show it off a little bit, and one that I really loved back in the day. I don't know if it's perfect, but we'll see. Okay, this now this is a working disc playing Saturn. It doesn't have the SD card thing where you don't need discs. And this is with softening on. I'll go ahead and turn softening off actually. And then this is the program that runs backups. It sees them as real Saturn games. Pretty sure this is not the music that was with the arcade game X-Men. I think that the person that made this took the animated series music and put it in there for whatever reason. Hot Rod X. So this is X-Men that's been made recently for the Sega Saturn. And of course they still make it. Just like I said, they made Unfinished Business. An excellent game. It's a magnificent Tomb Raider adventure. In case you're tired of Tomb Raider and maybe you just followed right along with it back in the day, Unfinished Business probably wasn't ever around because it was like some kind of expansion for the PC. I don't know if it ever came out for the consoles. And then so someone took that expansion and converted it, and it was painstaking. They had to change things around to make it work on the Saturn, and it is fun. Like it really does kind of like breathe life back into that old pattern, that old type of Tomb Raider recipe, right? Okay, so who am I going to pick? Of course I'll pick, let's see, Moist Howlette here. I wish more people would watch my videos so they could laugh at my stupid jokes. That's a great one. Moist Howlette, come on. Look, they're little tiny sentinels. I mean, honestly, I don't remember the arcade game enough to know how close this is, or if it's identical, or... honestly, this could be the Avengers with X-Men characters, and I wouldn't even know. I wouldn't know the difference, so... Maybe I could look it up. Probably not. I don't care. Now, my favorite Saturn game from back in the day, homebrews and Neo Geo aside, and I really love Neo Geo games, would have been Groove on Fight, which is actually Power Instinct 3, and it's a fighting game with beautiful characters. And so, hey, if you want to have fun though, okay, you can play the Magnificent game, only instead of screaming, take a shot or drink a beer every time I say magnificent in this game, because Groove on Fight is a magnificent game. The character art is magnificent. The music is magnificent. I love it. Is it better than Power Instinct 2? Yeah, probably. Even though Power Instinct 2 has certain things about it that I love. One thing I wouldn't recommend, though, is buying Power Instinct 2 for the PlayStation because you love the arcade game. Because the best parts of the arcade game are screwed up for the PlayStation 2. I've got a whole crowd of little sentinels asking for my autograph. Give the Moist Howlette room. Finally, I'm dead. Yes. So, this plays pretty good. It looks good. It's cheesy, just like those old games. Now, I might be mistaken, but I think this is the engine and the first game for this engine that then became Turtles in Time, or the Turtles arcade game, and the Simpsons arcade game, which were, I think, 3 and 4 player games. I think most of them were 3 player games. And were really great games. Like Turtles. Turtles was the bomb. It was excellent. Now, which Turtles is better? Super Nintendo or Sega Genesis? Is, what was it called? Either way, the Turtle games that were based on the arcade. One came out for the Super Nintendo, Turtles in Time. What was the other one? Manhattan Project or something like that? Now most people are going to say, of course, the Super Nintendo game is better. And it is fun, But I like the Genesis game better. I like how it plays. I like the story and stuff. Now, what do I like about the Super Nintendo? The scaling. When you hook onto a bad guy, you can throw them towards the screen. And that was preserved, I think, if I'm not mistaken, that was preserved from the arcade. Which was a great game. Sucking pretty bad at this. Okay, let's go ahead and hit smoothing. There we go. Alright, now it looks like Jim Lee himself appeared and redrew the game to be the finest representation of comic anatomy known to man. Okay. So let's branch off to a brand new argument that we can all share together. Was Rob Liefeld a bad comic book artist? Okay, that's the subject. Okay, talk amongst yourselves, because I'm getting verklempt. Jim Lee was neither a comic book artist or the best artist. Talk amongst yourselves. Okay. So most people would agree. This game has no pause button. Okay, let's kill it. Okay. Most people would agree that Rob Liefeld sucked and Jim Lee was the greatest of all time. So let's talk about that for a second, because it's really fun to argue about something really stupid like that. I'll go ahead and I'll turn on a game in the background while we do this. Okay, let's turn on, was Turtle Fighters a good one? Why not? This is with softening. Now, let's start off with my argument statement. Okay? I'm going to go ahead and start this. Okay, now, long ago, when my hormones were exploding and everything was about TNA and beautiful girls and having girlfriends and just, you know, getting away with everything I can get away with. Drinking, smoking, you know, hotel rooms and motel rooms and just partying as much as I can and girlfriend all the time, you know. Can't believe I didn't have a litter of children by the time I was 18, okay? I was deep, okay? I was in it all the time, no matter what, right? Back then, when Rob Liefeld and Wiles Portacio and Jim Lee and all these guys were the big deal, they're about to become Image. I actually bought the video where they talk about Image Comics about to come out, and it was How to Draw Comic Books, starring Todd McFarlane, Rob Liefeld, Jim Lee, and Wiles Portacio. And Stan Lee was there pretending to sleep through the whole thing, and they were teaching you about comics and how they're made and stuff, right? Now, since time immemorial, comics have had their own styles, and artists have had their own styles, and you know, you can sit there and nitpick artwork and say that, you know, whatever, Frank Miller's kneecaps suck, or this or that art all looks the same, and this guy sucks, and this guy's good. But the truth is, comics were never meant to be anatomic perfection, okay? These were things that were made to be generationally pertinent, and they were meant to be chronologically applicable throwaway. They were meant to line your birdcage a couple weeks after you read them. No one made comic books thinking people are going to keep these forever and they're going to put them in acrylic and sell them for thousands of dollars. That wasn't a thing. When they first came out, if there was a world war, then the comic would be full of, you know, negative stereotype images of Chinese, Japanese, Nazis, whoever we were fighting against, right? You know, Superman would beat the Nazis, or Batman would interrogate a Japanese man, right? Something terrible like that. These were all, comics were used to convey pertinent themes that were generational, okay? The artwork was secondary, and they were rapidly produced, rapidly written, and they were meant to attract people, but they were never meant to be perfect artwork that is just profoundly anatomically perfect, okay? That was never, that would be like trying to complain because Elmer Fudd looks like a squat little midget baby with a giant nose. That's not realistic. Who drew Elmer Fudd? How come that rabbit is standing upright and talking? Why is he asking me what's up when rabbits can't talk? You know, that's what I feel like when people say Rob Liefeld was a crappy artist. Rob Liefeld was not a crappy comic book artist. Why? Because comics are not supposed to be anatomically perfect representations of human form. Was Jim Lee the best at drawing anatomically perfect human forms? He was good. You could argue that every woman looked like a supermodel with the same face and the same lips and the same eyes. And if you look at Psylocke and then look at Jean Grey and then look at, you know, Storm, they all have the same face, they all have the same eyes, they all have the same lips, they all have the same body. Do they look good? Yeah. But do they look real? Not necessarily. Are they pleasing to look at? Yeah. Are they anatomically perfect? They're close. This guy had a way of doing great anatomy. Yes. But comic books are not meant to be perfect depictions of anatomy. What Rob Liefeld had was a theme and a style that worked well with comics. He could spit it out the door nice and fast. People could try to meet the deadlines and get the stories done and everything. He had ideas for characters. I'm pretty sure, I might be wrong about this, but I'm pretty sure he was like under the age of 18 when he started drawing comic books. He was a kid. And so they saw that he had a good enough style for comics. The original guys, like Stan Lee and stuff, they knew what comic books were about. They knew what the real deal with it was. Now, comic books were not smut mags. Comic books were not anatomically perfect paintings or drawings, and they were never meant to be. They are generationally pertinent, thematic, kind of, you know, event-driven. They're meant to, like, okay, like if all of a sudden the big thing everyone's talking about is gay rights, then there's going to be comic books about how this one hero is secretly gay, now he's coming out, people hate him, people love him, there's people marching down the street, there's guys kissing guys, girls kissing girls. That was what comic books did. Okay, if George, you know, maybe if George Floyd were to have died in the 90s, then all the comic books would have been about one black guy that got killed with police brutality, right? And so they would have that be a recurring theme in a couple of different stories. They were trying to be the popular fad and also pertinent, idealist, generational. And so that's why when you look at comic books from a long, long time ago, or TV shows from a long time ago, they look racist. They look bigoted. They look like they're giving people negative stereotypes, because that was the mindset they wanted people to have at the time. They don't want you to love Nazis or love Japanese people when we're at war with Japan and we hate the Nazis, right? And so the same thing could be said about any of the generational comics and what they portray. Now, have they gotten smarter and more cerebral? Yes. Has the artwork changed? Yes, it has. It's evolved, and they have different art, different styles, different artists and stuff. A lot of the artists today, they will take a picture from a you know, a smut magazine or something, or like a you know, uncensored art, you know, picture photograph magazine, like a, you know, a rated X, whatever, terrible, you know, whoever you are, liking that stuff or not, they'll take an image from one of those and they'll just trace over it and make that into Spider-Woman, okay, or make that into, I don't know, Spider-Gwen or something. They'll take some tennis star, you know, and just trace him and turn that into Spider-Man or something like that. So, my point is, I guess, that Rob Liefeld is an excellent comic book artist, and that we owe him for Young Bloods, which you know, is dead. X Factor, X Force, Deadpool, you know, all of these different offshoots. Some of his Image comics that whether they survived or not, you know, what was his art anatomically perfect? No, but it was dynamic. His art was very dynamic. Could you point out flaws? Yeah, you can also point out flaws in everyone's art, including Jim Lee's or Todd McFarlane. Todd McFarlane, man, look at the teeth he draws. He does somebody like some bad guy with like literally 75 teeth in his mouth, and they're all perfect and they're weird as. Someone says that all of Liefeld's faces look the same. Well, most of McFarlane's faces look the same too. A lot of Jim Lee's faces look the same. So I do not believe now, as a mature, near 50-year-old man, better educated in it and having seen a lot more of the subject matter, you know, having thousands of comics now instead of just a stack that I was lucky enough to have when I was 16, you know. A lot of it probably did end up being birdcage, toilet paper, or whatever, you know. I have a better understanding now, and I'm a lot more mature about it. I think Rob Liefeld's art's really good. And I have a lot of his comic books from back in the day. And I can read them. They're not absolutely horrible, you know. But, so yeah. Let's all hate on the poor guy, right? And now, this many years later, how many years later, what is he like? You know, is he like my age? Is he 50 or something, or 60? And he's had to go through that. And anybody who really understands what comic books are about, like Archie. Archie was beautiful. You could be attracted to the girls or the guys. You could love the stories. You could come up with themes about whether Jughead is his secret gay lover or whether the girls are, you know, crazy or whatever. And then, but they're not anatomically perfect. You know, you're attracted to anime girls, and their eyes look like, I don't know, their faces look like someone took a ball of clay and literally just pinched it, and you've got two caved-in eye sockets and a little pointy nose, and they got great big eyes with way too much stuff going on in them, right? And they're beautiful, you know? You can fall in love with them and be attracted to them and stuff, no problem at all. But for some reason, Rob Liefeld was a crappy artist, right? Look, I don't think he really was a crappy artist, you know? I think that, you know, again, my original point long ago about the Batman stuff and everything, people are absolutely spoiled rotten. You know, we're like entitled little spoiled rotten brats who have so much abundance that we can just nitpick and attack everything around us. And, you know, I think most people are wrong anyway when it comes to those types of judgments. But, you know, I think Rob Liefeld's a pretty good artist. Maybe he got better. I haven't seen, you know, anything in his recent. I think he still is involved in comic books. Pretty sure he is, you know. So Liefeld, he came back and started with comics again. And then what if Mark McFarlane went and started making toys, which are... They started out being staction figures, which are statue action figures. Statues that were cut up to have moving joints, but the moving joints can't be used because it's a statue. It just throws the whole thing off balance. And then he ended up starting to make some of the best action figures out there, right? And, you know, he did Spider-Man like no one else ever did Spider-Man. He did amazing artwork back in the day, and it was... You know, yes, there are some more visually appealing aspects to some of Jim Lee's art and some of McFarlane's art when compared to Liefeld, but based on the way comic books are supposed to be and what they actually convey and the way they are, you know, no, he's not a bad artist. He was never a terrible artist. But today, someone's looking at Jim Lee's art and they're, you know, looking at the girls and the dudes and how muscular and the anatomy. They're looking at the perfect anatomy of it. And then going, oh, Liefeld sucks. He doesn't suck. You could argue that Liefeld was a better comic book artist than Jim Lee or Todd McFarlane. Because the style of comic books isn't, you know, perfect anatomy. It's more dynamic, action-oriented, and stuff like that. Why not, though? I mean, it's just a fun little thing to argue about. So... buy a retro RetroScaler2X. You won't regret it if you have old school systems and you want to play them. And so thanks for tolerating me now if you watched my video for this way, way too long video that I'm sure that it will be.